And I think there's so many people out there that feel that way. Well, I just don't think it's true. We all have different life experiences, different ways that we see the world, and your story matters, and it's going to relate to someone out there.
Welcome back to the Cypress Room, where we dive deep on influencing with integrity. I'm Christina Mascari.
And I'm Meggie Honeycutt, and welcome back.
Welcome back to another episode.
Yes, today we are going to talk about authenticity and vulnerability. This is something we've kind of had on our list of podcast topics for quite a while now, and I was inspired to do it today because I recently watched the Alix Earle interview with Forbes magazine, and I was so intrigued by her story and the way that she has created her brand. So if you don't know, Alix Earle, she is a TikTok creator who has really just skyrocketed in popularity in the last couple of years. And recently Forbes interviewed her because she made $5 million last year.
Crazy. And she's 22.
She
just
is
graduated
22,
college last year. The University of Miami.
Yes, just graduated from college. And I found it so intriguing. First of all, she has a very strong brand that she has created. And, most 22-year-olds, I think, she seems very focused and like honed in on what her audience loves. And the story she told in the interview I thought was fascinating, because when he asked about what her brand was, she said it's about being unapologetically yourself. Like, it's okay being messy, showing up as a mess, but just being yourself. And I think that really has translated well in the way that she puts out content, and it resonates with that age group and really with all people, that vulnerability, relatability, authenticity. And she kind of talked about her journey of when she really hit it big. And there was a specific story she shared about her acne journey. And that's really where she kind of rose to fame and skyrocketed in numbers, is because she shared that journey. And I think that's really relatable. So I wanted us to kind of talk with that as our springboard today about what does authenticity and vulnerability look like in a social space? Because I think that right now we're seeing the creators that are really up and coming, getting the most followers, traction, brand deals, are ones who can really hone in on their own story and how it relates and resonates with an audience. And how they tell it too, I think, is a part of it that maybe we can discuss. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
We're going to be sharing a little bit of our own journey in vulnerability and authenticity in being a content creator and putting yourself out there.
Yes.
And then, of course, stick around to the end, because we're going to be talking about our favorite things. How we love to share what we're loving with you. So stick around for all of that. It's all coming up in the episode.
Yes, it's going to be good.
It's going to be good. So I've been a fan of, I wouldn't say I'm a fan. I have been a follower of Alix Earle for a while. I started following her probably about a year ago when she started just showing up at my FYP on TikTok, because I do enjoy just scrolling a TikTok because it will feed me what I want to watch. And it kept feeding me her over and over again. I'm like, well, I'm clearly watching her content, and I'm watching it for an extended amount of time, and I'm watching her videos all the way to the end, because she is just a good storyteller, and she brings you into her life without necessarily showing you her life. She just talks about it. And I really related to her just being in her messy apartment with 7 other girls and like getting ready to go out for the night and talking about what happened from the night before. There was something very nostalgic about it for me, just like kind of transformed me back to those younger years in college and what life looked like back then. And I actually was not there for her acne journey, but I would have honestly really related to that. I guess I found her after she had already gone through all of that stuff, but she, she talked about in that interview how she had really bad acne and would cover it up and hide it and do the beauty filters and have tons and tons of makeup on before she ever showed up on her page and would make videos. And then she talked about how she started live streaming, just getting ready for the night and telling stories, and those were performing way better than her polished videos. And so that was kind of her inspiration to bring her audience into her acne journey, going on Accutane, what it was like, and then actually getting ready and showing what her skin looked like before she got ready.
I know. I thought that was really fascinating too, because I've always, and I'm just starting my journey of putting myself out there, and it is a natural inclination to want to show up on these social spaces as your best self.
Yeah.
I mean, I find myself even tempted by the filters and wanting to put on lashes when I'm going to get on video, because it's our natural inclination to want to put that best self forward. Yeah. And it was the same for her, but I just found it so interesting that she found success by just being real, showing up as is in her mess, in her realness. This is my real skin. And people really connected with that. And I just found it so fascinating. And also it had me questioning, well, what does that look like for me or for you guys out there? I mean, I think it's individual to everyone. We don't just want to look at somebody and be a copy, because that kind of erases the point of authenticity. But it just raised that question. What does real authenticity look like? How do we connect? And where's the boundary? What does that look like? So,
well, I want to start with going back to her interview. She talked about, because he asked what was the journey of creating content. And the first thing she said is, I liked creating content, but it took her 2 years to figure out the type of content she needed to make and what related with people and like how she needed to present herself. And I guess that's something that I just want to talk about a little bit, because I know you're new to this space and I'm trying to channel myself back to when I first started. But when you first start, you just have to give yourself grace, because when there is a camera on you, you have to learn how to be yourself in front of the camera.
Yeah.
I was a person who grew up in drama. Like, I took drama all throughout high school, and I was in plays growing up at church and things. And so that is a different type of performance. And when you're growing up and you're learning how to give speeches in class, just thinking back to speech class, you're taught a certain way of how to present yourself. And you can't say like, and you can't say and you have to have an outline, and you have to have a clear speech. And that stuff is all true. It's all true for the business world. It is true for certain aspects. It's true for film. It's true for television. It's true for being on the stage. But then when you are not being a character, when you're not putting on a presentation, you have to figure out, how do I really, truly, fully be myself when a camera is on and on social media? And I think what Alix said is beautiful. It does take time.
Yeah.
And giving yourself grace to have that time and to be comfortable with that camera on and not be like putting on a show. But I don't think it's us trying to hide who we are. It's just being comfortable in a space that you've never put yourself out in before.
Yeah. And giving yourself the grace to figure it out.
Yeah.
I think is probably where I'm at right now. And also figuring out for me, the parts of your story to share. I think everyone has a story worth sharing. It's just figuring out, what is that? How do I share it? When do I share it? When do I draw people in? And I think you can only figure those things out by getting behind the camera and just starting and posting that content.
And being in the process and being okay with the process. The thing too about Alix, like, I love all this stuff about, well, I was relatable and I shared about my acne journey. She's also drop dead gorgeous. Okay, guys, acne or not, she has a banging body. She has had, some work done, which she is also honest and open about, and why she has done that certain work. Which encourages me to be honest on like the things that I'm doing with. And I'll just, I'm going to just be authentic and drop a bomb right now. And you might be scared when I do this, but I just started getting Botox about a year ago in my forehead. And I honestly really like it.
Yeah.
So I have had deep lines in my forehead for a very long time. And specifically getting on stories. There was just a point where I was getting on a story and I'm like, I just don't like the way that looks. And I'm like, maybe I'm going to try out Botox and see how it goes. And the great thing about Botox is if you don't like it, you can stop using it and your face just goes back to normal. But I have been enjoying it, and it gives me a confidence boost when I'm on my stories. So there's me being vulnerable with you guys, sharing something that I'm doing now that is changing the way that I look a little bit.
Yes, and I have done Botox for 3 years, so nobody knows any different looking at me, because I also get it in my forehead because I had such deep lines that makeup was getting into it, and I didn't like the way that looked in pictures and different things and in person. So I do like that part of this vulnerability movement that we're saying when we show up. I look this way, and here's what I've done.
And here's what I've done. And like, and not being,
I don't know.
I was
not
just born
to say
this
this
way,
is all natural. Because I also do love a good lash too.
Yeah.
Fake lashes. I love all that. I have hair pieces that I put in
on occasion.
Not as often anymore.
Yeah.
But
which Alix has been honest about as well. Like she'll show taking out her hair like when she's going for events and things like that. So yeah, just showing like at the end of the night, you don't look so great, which is kind of fun.
Yes, I know. I do think it's fun. And I think when you're watching that stuff, it almost makes you feel like you're one of the girlfriends. They're like getting ready to go out, or, decompressing at the end of a night out when, I know in college, my friends and I would all the next day share stories, and it kind of welcomes you into somebody's world and makes you feel kind of connected to them, which I think is really neat. But I also think vulnerability looks different in different spaces. So you have come up as more of a furniture flipping DIY content creator. So it's not as much about my
looks,
personal life. I was going to say personal life, not your looks.
Say looks. I mean, because a lot of Alix's content is based on putting on makeup and here's my outfit that I'm wearing out for tonight and things like that, which I think, that works for her. But like if I'm talking about if I'm talking about my Botox on my social media, people will probably be like, why are you talking about this? So it's not as, you have to figure out what is relatable for what your audience is watching.
Yes.
And for me, it was like people watching my stuff and being like, well, I could never do that. I could never pick up a power tool. Like I can't paint. So for me, it was sharing those stories of like, hey, I understand exactly where you're at, because before the first time I ever picked up a paintbrush, I'm like, hey, I failed out of art in high school. Well, I didn't fail out of art. I asked the teacher to move me out of that class because I thought I was going to fail. So I've never done design or color theory or anything like that, or had any instruction on how to do what I do today. So there was always this level of, well, why should anybody listen to me? But that's what I shared. Like I would say, I am not an expert. I just picked this up and did it. And so if I can do it, I think you can do it too. And then pulling people into projects that I maybe got over my head in, especially when they're with a brand and they want me to use a specific product that I've never used before.
Yes.
And instead of being like, I'm an expert at this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I am in a panic right now. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to push forward. And I would always share that in my stories. And then when the project was done and I pushed through it, I would get on there and I would cry. And I wouldn't intentionally do that, but I wouldn't cut those parts out when they happen naturally. And I would just say, hey, I'm not a perfect person and everything can be fixed. And sometimes when you're working on projects, you are going to feel like this. But trust me, like if you push through the end, it's going to be so rewarding. So those are the ways that I have been vulnerable on my social media. And it has really resonated with people because I think we all feel that way when we're watching social media. It's like, well, I could never be that. I could never do that. And so just encouraging them that like, hey, I feel like that 95% of the time. And just saying it's normal. It's normal to feel that way, but don't let that stop you from chasing something that you want to do. So that is what vulnerability looks like for me in my content.
Well, I love that because I think that it looks different in every space. And that's part of, every person, no matter what space they're in, just figuring out what works for you and what your audience wants to hear from you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we also should say, we aren't using our microphone stands today.
I know.
And that was also kind of inspired by Alix Earle and her new Hot Mess podcast.
Mm-hmm. So she started a podcast.
She did start a podcast.
She's got lots of views and she's already monetized, but we're not going to be bitter about it.
No, we're not.
Our
day will come.
We're going to celebrate her, but she uses the same microphones that we do.
She does.
So we were kind of excited to see that.
And she does it super casual. They're kind of like sitting on a bed or something, aren't
she
they?
just kind of takes the setup wherever she goes. I did notice she does do a 2-camera setup. So I think she probably has a production team that's like, hey, set up a camera straight on and then set up a camera to the side. She probably records everything, sends it to somebody else to edit. I'm just assuming that she's not editing it herself. This is all hearsay.
Yes.
But she is doing just this really casual style with like, ours is portable. And we decided to try out the handheld the first time when we went to Florida because we were having to take it there. And we thought it would be easier for our friend. And we knew the type of setup we were going to be in did not really lend itself to having the microphone stands.
Yes.
And so we did that podcast, and then we have done another one, and we kind of are liking the handheld. It feels more like casual, natural. I don't know.
It does, but I'm still learning to be natural. You might hear me like banging it because I'm like, I don't know which hand, and it's my hand getting sweaty. So
I love when I start cackling that I can see, and then I just hit the wall with it. But I love that I can pull it away from my face because I don't know if you guys have noticed this in the podcast, and we constantly are learning things as we're doing it, but my voice is lower than Meggie's, and I tend to be louder than Meggie. And so we're trying to figure out how our voices balance and exactly where we need to hold the microphone. And I feel it just feels a little easier to be able to pull the microphone away. And I don't know. So,
I've liked it so far. It feels more casual.
so you guys let us know, which do you like better, the microphone stands or holding the microphones down in the comments?
So let's talk about, when is it too much? When do you think vulnerability crosses the line, or does it? When I started thinking about this, it just made me think, well, there are sometimes I'm watching somebody and I'm like, oh, like that doesn't feel nice. Like that's not good. And is that just my own preferences, or are there invisible boundaries around vulnerability? What do you think?
I think it's subjective. So I think your vulnerability is not going to be always someone's cup of tea. I do think that there's a balance to it. I think if you're showing up every day just being like oversharing, for me, that's going to turn me off. Maybe some people like that. But for me, I just want to find a balance of being authentically myself, sharing some of my personal stories and personal background, but also like showing people what they're there for. And with me, my social outlets are kind of more educational. I think there is an entertainment value for people who maybe just like to watch DIY but are never going to attempt it. But there's a lot of people that watch me for, why are you using that product? How did it work? How do I get this type of look? How do I achieve this? So there is an educational aspect to mine. And if I was just showing up every day sharing about like personal things that happened to me and, maybe embarrassing things like bathroom stories and things like that, people probably would be turned off. But people like that out of somebody like Alix. She, on her podcast, shared this whole story about how she ended up going to the ER with her boyfriend, who she has now revealed who he is. He's a dolphin player. But shared this whole story about how she couldn't determine if it was gas or what it was. And it ended up being an ovarian cyst. And so she's watching it. And so prayers for Alix to be healed from all of that and that everything's fine with that. But she shared this whole story about like having to answer questions about gas and her bowel movements in front of this guy. Is that going to go over with my audience? Probably not. So you also have to know your audience and what level they want. But at the end of the day, like if Alix would have never started sharing that really personal stuff, she might not be where she's at, and she might have not made $5 million last year. So I think it's personally up to you what your audience responds to, what you feel comfortable sharing, and see where it goes from there. But in terms of me personally, do I think you can overshare? 100%. And if if you overshare and I'm like, I don't really like that, I might stop watching you. But again, that's like completely subjective, and you have to figure out the line that you want to walk and the balance that you have in that.
I think that's a good point.
Like, where are you at? Because I feel like you're super still reserved in this area and like letting people in. How are you feeling?
I guess for me, the vulnerability piece comes out easier when we're doing this podcast. For me, I still haven't figured out yet how to translate that into short form, like on socials, because when we're having a long, deep conversation on the podcast, that's where it's more natural for me to share some of my experiences and my journey and what that's looked like. I haven't yet figured out what that looks like in a short form space or how that translates. So I guess I'm still figuring out that part of it, that piece, because I'm not really sure yet.
Yeah. And we're too, like, it gave me a lot of encouragement hearing Alix say, like, I didn't really know what I was doing for 2 years. And I think we're pretty hard on ourselves sometimes with this brand with Cypress Room, because Meggie has worked behind the scenes with me with Pretty Distressed, and we have this established brand that we're working on and growing and doing things with. I think we sometimes forget that Cypress Room is like still just a baby, and we are going to have a lot of those failures and try things and them not work out, and see what comes from that. But I guess it's hard having like a second brand after a successful brand, and we almost have amnesia. It's like I need to remember all the failures that brought me to the point of having a successful brand and kind of put that into Cypress Room. And it's just like, well, we'll just try and see what happens. I mean, maybe this is an encouragement for us to pull some of this like deep stuff that we have out of the podcast into our short form content and what that looks like. Yeah.
But you know, the other thing I was thinking is for me, and I know vulnerability is relative too, because for me, it felt vulnerable even to share the size of jeans I wear.
Oh, wow.
Or to put my weight and all of that information in like a lifestyle post when I'm talking about the jeans I love or a shirt I love. So I think it's very relative too. And you kind of, you know, it's like growing that muscle of sharing these pieces of yourself. But yeah, to me, that felt vulnerable.
Okay, well, I want to dig into why you felt it was important to share that information.
I think that it's important because when I go on social media and when I'm following fashion influencers especially, and I'm liking something that they're wearing and then I buy it and it looks totally different on me, I want to know like, well, how tall are you? How much do you weigh? Like, is that going to look on me the way it looks on you? And I shared that stuff because I have a hard time finding people who look like me and are my body shape and size. And so I felt like it was important to share that because that's what I want when I'm looking at people, you know, for fashion finds and stuff.
And I love that. And that's what people want to see. They want to see themselves represented in like the fashion world, because we're not all going to be tiny and have, you know, a big chest and be like some of the most popular influencers. We're super, super tiny and really petite. So I think it's beautiful. And I think that it really is an encouragement to people. And I love that people, like, you don't have to be a supermodel to like help people and influence like fashion and beauty stuff. I think it's really beautiful the way that things are changing.
Yes. And, you know, I do love it when I follow people, even in the fashion space, that don't look like me and aren't my size and stuff. I've just been so encouraged about how the messaging has become so much more real and relatable in that space, I think, because you are seeing all sizes, all shapes represented, and people who are very vulnerable about sizing, and they're very comfortable in the way they look and they appreciate. And I feel like it hasn't always been that way.
No.
So I do love that. And that's why I felt brave enough to just go ahead and put my own sizing stats out there as well. But, you know, that was kind of like a baby step of vulnerability for me in that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think too, we've talked a lot recently about testimonies in our podcast. And that seems like a really fancy word for just like every single person out there has a different life experience. And I know we talked to a friend just at church the other day who is so cute, has an amazing story, amazing personality. And yet she thinks, well, I don't have anything to share. And I think there's so many people out there that feel that way. Well, you know, I just don't think it's true. We all have different life experiences, different ways that we see the world, and your story matters and it's going to relate to someone out there. And I just think it's such a lie we believe that our experiences, our stories don't matter.
Yeah.
Because I absolutely think they do. And I think now more than ever, showing up in this social space, sharing your stories, sharing your life, being vulnerable, being relatable, is really the way forward. It's the way you make connections and create community in this space. And I think it's ultimately what's going to be what makes people successful or not on these platforms.
Yeah. And I think, when we were chatting with our friend, I pulled her aside because I said, hey, do you ever share like your outfits and stuff on your Instagram, on your personal Instagram? And she's like, well, I'm kind of getting more comfortable doing that, because she was just talking about that she's, walking through a healing journey of diabetes. And I was like, every time I see you, you're just like styled and you look so cute. And I would love to know like what you're wearing. Like it would help me out to see how you style it, because I'm just not a styler. I'm not.
Me either.
I have to follow other people to see like what works for me and what you can put together and how to style yourself. And so we just shared with her about that, and shared was like, you need to listen to our podcast, because like this is what we want to encourage people. That I think people are so too, they're like, well, yeah, I could share that, but I don't want to share links, and I don't want to like just be pushing in sales. But you are doing that, but you're also providing a service. And I think one of the things about the Cypress Room, is that we want you to know that you can make money doing what you like doing, and it's okay. Like you don't have to feel bad for influencing a sale, influencing somebody to buy something. You don't have to feel icky about that. I just feel like that word influencer is being redeemed, because I think we're so used to people just pushing everything and like somebody paying them to push something. But I think the trend that I'm seeing is that people are sharing things that they are using. People are sharing things that they are wearing. They're not sharing a different clothing brand every other day. They're sharing you like, this is the brand that I go to again and again. This is my 5th pair of jeans with this brand. This is my, 5th time I'm buying this particular tool brand, and this is why I like it. You're sharing your experience, and you should feel okay that you are getting paid for that. I don't know what it is, particularly about women, that I run into and have conversations with, like thinking that their voice doesn't matter, thinking that the market is already oversaturated, and thinking that they don't deserve to make money off of the work that they're doing. So that was just like one brief conversation that we got to have with a friend. And I know there's so many of you out there like that, probably listening, being like, well, what do I have to say? Well, that seems salesy. Well, but like you have value, like your opinion matters, and you deserve to be paid for it. I don't know why I feel so empowered to say this today, because this is not in our notes, but I know this is for somebody out there, because you do deserve to be paid for like the things that you're doing.
Yes. And it's stuff we would do with our own friends and the people that we encounter just in our real life. Like when I compliment somebody and say, oh, where did you get that? I mean, and when people ask me, I love sharing that information. And this is really no different than that. It's just giving you some more reach, some more people. And I love that it's a new way to shop, to find out about different brands, to even just see, products on a person before you buy it. I love that stuff. And I do think, I used to get so irritated. Like there was one influencer in particular that I would follow, and I had started out really trusting her opinion, but then it was like every single week she was promoting a different skincare brand. I think we're seeing less and less of that now, but that's something that used to really frustrate me. I'm like, well, which one really is good? You know what I mean? And now I think we are that authenticity piece is really coming through. And you can tell too, we can sniff it out as, when we're consuming content, if this is something somebody really uses on a daily basis. And I appreciate it. I really like the way that it's kind of turning in this authenticity piece, and that people can monetize that as well and get paid for it. Like that is amazing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of this trend of authenticity and vulnerability.
And maybe we can all be like Alix Earle one day and make $5 million in a year.
Hashtag goals.
But like those things, I do have to check my heart sometimes and my soul when I hear those things. Cause I'm like, and I think your human nature is to pick someone apart like that and be like, and say, well, I could never be like that because the X, Y, and Z and da. But guess what? Like if she can do it, it can happen for somebody else. And, I shared this example in our last podcast, but Tabitha Brown is someone who just popped off later in life. She is a beautiful African-American woman. So I love that she's a minority in her, what people would say, like past the prime of when you could come up in the world. But not only is she a successful content creator now, but she is an encourager. She's teaching people how to eat healthy as a vegan and heal their body if you're having any issues in that area. And she has, a spice line with McCormick. She has her own natural hair care company now that is in Ulta and Target. And like, if she can do it, like I can do it. If Alix Earle can do it, I can do it. And you may never hit those huge milestones of owning your own company, but like, you don't necessarily have to have that. Like if you have that dream to just share more of yourself and you feel like you have something to say, just like put yourself out there, shoot your shot. It's my thing I've been saying, like, what's the worst that can happen? Nobody watches and you wasted some time, but guess what? You learned a lot of things along the way. Maybe you got more comfortable talking in front of the camera. You can go make Amazon review videos and maybe make money that way. So it's just like the opportunity is out there. So when you see people like really, really successful, instead of being like, well, I don't like this about them and I would never do that and I would never do this. Like I would just say, take it as an example of like, look what can happen if you just lean into like who you are and what's special about you.
Yes.
And you can make money at it. So
yes,
I think it's an encouraging story.
I think it goes back to, though, also lean into it, put yourself out there and just keep doing it. You have to keep doing it. Like, 2 years it took her to really hone and refine her skills and figure out what her audience wanted. So it's not always an overnight success thing.
Yeah.
But so you mentioned Tabitha Brown. Who else do you think is doing this really well?
Well, I think someone who I've seen a lot of success with is Elise Myers. And she's like a singer and a comedian. And I mean, she doesn't really do a lot of the product placements and things. I think she's more of an entertainer, but she has always just been herself. And she shows up with her beautiful curly hair, not done, all in a mess because she was like a new mom. And I think she's had a second child now, or she's pregnant with her second child. So she has just always been like, these are the things that I'm struggling with. For me, she tends to be a little bit of an oversharer. So, but like when I think she's oversharing, maybe I'll skip over those things, but she's also very endearing and is just not afraid to show up without a lick of makeup on, because I think that's how she lives her life.
Yeah.
And she just has a beautiful spirit. I think the hate gets to her a lot. So it's hard for me to watch that content when she's just struggling with like the people that are just saying all the negative things, but it is real and vulnerable.
Yeah.
So I just think she's someone that is just authentically being herself and has seen success. Because from the outside, like if you looked at her, it would be like, if you showed her to a bunch of people, is this person going to be successful in a year? And like, will millions of people be following her? Everybody probably would have been like, no. But it just goes to show that in this age of social media, there's not the gatekeeping of an agent or like this big corporation that's going to say, oh, you're going to be a star. Like you don't have to have that anymore. You have access to the public. And if the public resonates with something that you're sharing, you can take off. So again, and it's like, she might not be everybody's cup of tea, but she's some people's cup of tea.
Exactly. Yeah. And you could be too.
You could be too. Yeah, because I definitely know I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And it's okay. It
is okay.
Everybody to like you.
Yes, but there are people out there that need to hear your story and what you have, because, it goes back to that idea of your testimony and the experiences of your life. Whatever you've walked through was not just for you. I think it's meant, I just so believe in that multiplication factor. And there's something that happens when we share a struggle we've gone through and overcome, a hard season, because there's somebody out there who can relate to that, and it touches them and encourages them to move through their hard season. And then maybe they go share it. It's that multiplication factor of just sharing what you've overcome in your life, what you've been through, your story, and it's going to bless somebody else and create that ripple effect that we've talked about several times in our podcast.
Yeah. And, you know, everyone always uses that term, like, everything happens for a reason. And I think that's BS personally. But I do believe, because of where my heart is and what my faith is in, like, I believe that my God can turn any situation and any circumstance I go through. I believe he can use it for my good.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're meant to handle some of the things that happen to us, but working through them, pushing through them. I don't think we deserve a lot of the things that happen to us, but there's always something good that can come out of it.
Yes.
So, and that just goes into your testimony. Like, your testimony is worth sharing. Things that you've walked through are worth sharing. It's an encouragement to somebody else. So if being vulnerable and authentic scares you in any way, I just want to encourage you that your situations, all the things you've been through, are unique, and they can be used for good. They can be used to move somebody forward, to encourage someone, to push someone. So don't hold back things that are bad that have happened to you, that you've worked through, or failures that you have, because we can learn from them and good can come out of, like, almost any situation. I really do believe that, even though they're hard going through them, and even if it's something like you didn't deserve, I really believe that good can come out of everything.
Yes, I believe that too. And if you're considering even getting into social media space in a role more similar to your Pretty Distressed role, share your process. Share your process. Tell the story of whatever that thing is you're creating, and welcome people into that journey. It doesn't always maybe have to look so personal too. Maybe just share your process and get vulnerable about the messiness of the before and after and what the in-between looked like. I think we're really trending in this way of where people really love the storytelling aspect of whatever it is you're doing, whether it's a personal experience, whether it's a project. So I think that's something to keep in mind, because maybe not everybody's going to want to show up in these social spaces and share personal or lifestyle type content. If you are creating things, there's some vulnerability that can happen there too, and it just may look a little different.
Yeah. Because I think even like in creating, I think we're going to talk about creating a small business and having a small business.
Yeah.
And it'll be less focused on content creation in some upcoming episodes. So I think that'll be some good information for that too.
Yeah.
What you're sharing there. Yeah.
Well, I think that probably wraps up our discussion. What do you think?
I think so too. Are we ready for favorite things?
We are ready for favorite things.
Okay. Should I go first?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a tried and true thing that I love, that I've been using for probably a year at the recommendation of Meggie and our friend Melissa. I used to be I got to cover up my face really, really a lot, because like Alix Earle, I struggled with acne for quite a while and have a lot of scarring from it. So I was using a heavier foundation, because that's what everybody was doing. Full coverage, full coverage. And it just, at the end of the day, it ends up looking cakey, and it can look good on film, but in person, I was looking a little dusty and crusty. So I found this. It's called a skin tint. It is by Ilia. You may have seen it, because I think it's kind of taking over, like, anybody 40 plus, I feel like, is using this. And I'm here to tell you that it is a holy grail type of product.
Is. Yes.
I have 2 different shades that I wear in the winter and the summer. It is very easy to go get matched at Sephora. They have a machine that will match you. If you're like, I don't want to just buy it off the internet, I recommend going there and getting shade matched those 2 different times. So then you can order it conveniently on Amazon from home. But it's really cool because it's a skin tint, so it's very thin, but it also has good stuff in it for you. It has, I'm not going to say it right, it's a niacinamide.
Yeah.
Is that close?
It's basically like skincare.
It is
and
like
makeup
skincare and makeup in one.
Yeah.
It's very thin and watery. I like to put mine on with a Real Techniques like kabuki brush. But it when I'm in a hurry, I will just put it on my fingers and wipe it all over my face, and that it blends really easily. It is buildable. So if you have some areas where you have a little bit of spotting, you can build it up. And the best part is it has 40 SPF in it, And if you are in your 40s, if you're in your 30s, if you're in your 20s, and you are not putting on SPF every morning, y'all need to do it, because that is the number one thing that you can do to keep your skin looking young. And I wish I would have worn it more in my 20s.
Yes.
Because I've been wearing it, since my 30s, and it has made a huge difference.
Yes.
In the content of in the way that my skin looks. So if you are out there and you've been using the same foundation for years and years, and you're, have some mature skin, or even if you're young and you just want to have more of that skin look.
Yes, real
this
skin
sounds like a
look.
Commercial, y'all, but I love this stuff.
Singing the
and
praises.
I have bought I think I've bought 4 or 5 bottles at this point. It is a little spendy. It is not drugstore makeup. It's a high-end brand. It's around $45, $40 or $45 for a bottle. But I feel like it lasts a while.
It lasts a long time. I feel like 4 months or so using it every day.
Yeah.
And 4 or 5 months.
And
so,
I actually
stuff.
use it on film now, and I like it. And I don't feel like I have to cake my skin for filming. So the fact that I can use it for filming and for every day, it has just become a huge go-to. And in the sense of vulnerability, authenticity that we're sharing today, this is something that has helped me feel more comfortable in my own skin.
Yes.
So there you go.
I love it.
That was a long one,
stuff.
but it's really good stuff.
I use it too. Mine is a little bit different. Not a skincare product, but I bought this wireless lavalier microphone at the recommendation of Aaron On Demand. And it is awesome. Like, if you are just starting out on your content creating journey, this is such an affordable option to get you some good audio from phone video content. So I got this on a flash sale, I think for $10. Normally, I think it's about $18. But what you do is you just
That's still really affordable at either one of those prices.
It is so affordable, and the audio content for this is very good and for what it is, and it's very user friendly. You just plug this bottom piece into your phone, and then it has a lapel clip for the microphone, or you can kind of hold it in your hands like you see a lot of people doing now, the little bitty ones,
little tiny microphone,
which is super cute and fun. So I'm loving it. I've only gotten to kind of play around with it this weekend, but I was pleasantly surprised at the quality of the audio, and I'm going to start using it more because I feel like sometimes when you're recording content and it's just your phone audio, it can get a little tricky if you walk away from your phone.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try starting to use this.
That sounds good. Have
It's
fun.
And we will put the links in the description box for you for these things so you can purchase them yourself if you're interested.
Perfect. Well, I would love to know in the comments who you guys are following.
Yes.
And if you think they really relate to this authenticity, vulnerability thing that we're talking about. We always love discovering new content creators. And if you have any other questions or just want to share about your journey in content creation or where you're at, if you're thinking about starting on social media and this encouraged you, we'd love to hear from you down in the comments.
Yes, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And we're also on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook if you'd like to go follow us there. We share a little bit more of kind of lifestyle stuff on those sites, and hopefully we'll continue to expand that as time goes on and we learn about how we want to show up in a vulnerable and authentic way on that space. But thanks for being here today. We will see you next time.